In the early months of 1942, the Pacific Ocean did not feel like an American frontier. It felt like a graveyard in the making. Pearl Harbor still smoldered in the nation's memory. The Philippines were collapsing, and Japanese carrier groups seemed to strike wherever they wished, whenever they wished. To many Americans, especially those reading the morning headlines, it felt as if the enemy was always one step ahead, faster, smarter, unstoppable. But behind the curtain of Japanese naval victories, a quiet battle was unfolding, one that did not involve battleships or bombers, but headphones, notebooks, and a single radio message that would change the course of the war. Thousands of miles from the front lines, in a low, airless building in Hawaii, a small group of American codebreakers were listening, not for gunfire, but for patterns. The U.S. Navy's cryptanalysts knew they were fighting a race against time. Every intercepted Japanese transmission carried fragments of a larger puzzle, but without the full picture, even the most brilliant minds could miss the truth staring them in the face. The enemy's next move was coming. The only question was where. By May 1942, American intelligence had one obsession: a mysterious target referred to repeatedly in Japanese naval communications as AF. The messages were encrypted, fragmented, and deliberately misleading, but the name appeared again and again. AF was clearly important. Ships were being assigned, fuel was being stockpiled, carrier groups were maneuvering. Whatever AF was, it was about to be hit hard, yet no one could state with absolute certainty what AF actually meant. Some officers believed AF was Midway Island, a tiny, strategically vital U.S. outpost in the Central Pacific. Others argued it might be Hawaii again, or even the West Coast. The stakes could not have been higher. If the Americans guessed wrong, the Pacific Fleet could be caught out of position, leading to another Pearl Harbor-scale disaster. Guessing was not enough. They needed proof. Inside the code-breaking unit, known as Station Hypo, the pressure was immense. The men and women there worked exhausting hours, fueled by weak coffee and stronger fear. Among them were linguists, mathematicians, and intelligence analysts, most unknown, none glamorous. They were not celebrated heroes. They were problem solvers, trapped in a war where mistakes meant thousands of deaths. The encrypted Japanese naval code, known as JN-25, was devilishly complex. It used numerical code groups that changed regularly and dummy signals meant to confuse anyone listening. Breaking it was not like unlocking a door. It was like dismantling a bomb while blindfolded, guessing which wires mattered. Still, American analysts had made progress, enough to understand general movement, enough to sense intention, but not enough to prove that AF was Midway. Time was running out. Then came an idea, simple, risky, and brilliant. If AF truly was Midway, then anything happening there would echo through Japanese communications. Fuel shortages, weather problems, mechanical failures, all would be reported back. The problem was how to force such a situation without alerting the enemy that their code was compromised. The solution came in the form of deception. Midway Island was instructed to send an unencrypted radio message, plain language, no code, stating that the island's freshwater distillation plant had broken down. As a result, Midway was reportedly running dangerously low on potable water. It was a harmless message, routine, mundane, the kind of logistical complaint that carried no obvious military importance. Within hours, Japanese radio traffic lit up. An intercepted Japanese message, encoded, just like the others, reported that AF is experiencing a water shortage. That was it. The room went silent. Years of training, months of exhaustion, weeks of argument, all collapsed into a single realization. AF was Midway. There was no longer any doubt. The Japanese Navy's greatest plan, an ambush meant to lure the remaining American carriers into a decisive trap, had just been exposed. Not by spies, not by brute force, but by a single radio message about water. Yet knowing the enemy's target was only one piece of the puzzle. The Americans now faced a terrifying responsibility. What would they do with this knowledge? The U.S. Navy was badly outnumbered. Japanese naval aviation crews were among the most experienced in the world. Their carriers had been tested in battle after battle with devastating effectiveness. But now, for the first time since Pearl Harbor, the Americans had something priceless: anticipation. Admiral Nimitz was faced with a decision that could either save or doom the Pacific Fleet. The plan forming in his mind was audacious, even reckless. Instead of retreating or spreading thin to guard everything, he would concentrate what little strength he had and set his own trap. If the Japanese expected an easy victory at Midway, the Americans would give them one, right until the moment it turned into a nightmare. Carriers were rushed into position. Damaged ships were repaired at record speed. Pilots barely trained on carrier landings were pushed into service. There was no margin for error. If intelligence had been wrong, this would be catastrophic. Meanwhile, unaware they had been exposed, Japanese commanders moved forward with supreme confidence. Their plan was elegant, complex, and ruthless. Midway would be attacked. American carriers would rush out to defend it. The Japanese main force would then annihilate them in a single climactic battle, securing dominance over the Pacific forever. But there was one fatal flaw in the plan. It relied on secrecy, and secrecy was already gone. As dawn broke on June 4th, 1942, Japanese aircraft roared into the sky, heading toward Midway. Bombs fell, runways burned, smoke rose. From the Japanese perspective, everything was proceeding perfectly. Reports flowed in. The island was damaged but not destroyed. A second strike might be needed. That suggestion, requesting a second attack, would unknowingly tip time in America's favor. While Japanese pilots debated rearming their planes, American carrier aircraft were already in the air, flying low over endless oceans, searching desperately for the enemy. Many would never find them. Many would die without ever seeing a Japanese ship. Torpedo squadrons were slaughtered almost to the last man, pressing attacks despite overwhelming defenses. And then, within a matter of minutes, the balance of naval power in the Pacific collapsed. American dive bombers appeared overhead almost by accident, catching the Japanese carriers with decks full of fueled aircraft and exposed munitions. Bombs struck, fires spread. Explosions ripped through ships that had been symbols of Japanese naval dominance just hours before. By the end of the day, 4 Japanese fleet carriers lay burning or sunk. The psychological shock was immense. These were not replaceable losses. Japan had trained its carrier pilots painstakingly over years. The expertise lost with those ships could never be fully recovered, and all of it traced back to a message that should never have mattered. In the aftermath, the significance of the intelligence victory became clear. This was not just a military success, it was a turning point. From this moment onward, Japan would largely fight on the defensive. Initiative shifted, momentum changed, confidence cracked. For the American public, the Battle of Midway was a rare piece of good news in a dark time, but few understood the invisible struggle that had made it possible. The battle before the battle, the quiet minds who listened, doubted, tested, and finally trusted a single clue. That radio message about water was never meant to be heroic. It was not broadcast with drama or urgency. It was a whisper, yet it carried the weight of the war. World War II is often remembered through images of explosions, speeches, and flags raised over conquered land. But sometimes, history turns not on firepower, just on information, on the ability to listen better than the enemy, to think faster, to notice what others dismiss as meaningless. The greatest naval plan Japan ever devised was not defeated by superior numbers or technology, but by a moment of insight, born of patience and precision. And in a war where silence often meant death, it was sound,